Hi everyone, this is Michael Kaplan from the American Guitar Academy, and today we are here with legendary guitarist Robben Ford. Robben, thanks for being here.
Hey, pleasure.
So why did you start playing guitar? Was there a specific event or?
Well, there was. Music was always a really important thing to me, and both my parents were musical, as was my older brother. He became a drummer. My younger brother played blues harp, sang. My first instrument was the saxophone, which I just sort of had a moment where I saw a saxophone player featured somewhere with a band, and I told my mom, I said, that's what I want to do. I want to do that right there. So she got me a saxophone. I was 10, and I started playing the saxophone. My father played the guitar, and so there was a guitar at the house, you know, and I would just fool around on it or fool around on the piano. And just drawn to it, you know. And I was in my first group by age 13, junior high school, put together a band. And the thing that really was the moment for me, though, was when I heard a guitar player named Michael Bloomfield with the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. They were a blues band out of Chicago, and this would have been, you know, roughly 1965 or 6. And, yeah, 66 probably. And I just flipped out for his guitar playing and for that Chicago blues music. It was very high energy. It was an integrated band, you know. There were black and white musicians. So it wasn't just a white band, or it wasn't like, you know, had it been Muddy Waters, I might not have connected right away. I was a little kid from a Northern California town, you know. But that really set the direction pretty much for the rest of my life.
All right, wow. So at that age, at the beginning, blues was the main influence?
Well, it's what, you know, it's like I found my direction as a guitar player. You know, it wasn't just music in general, you know, learning chords and playing the pop hits on the radio. You know, that's what you did.
Right.
You know, you just played what you heard on the radio.
Sure.
But when I heard that, I wanted to play blues. Now that's what I wanted to do.
Your influences, I assume, over the years, of course, heavily blues-based, but do they change? In other words, are you listening to different things now and influenced differently now by different artists as opposed to back then? For
sure. You know, it has to do with the needs, kind of your situation to some degree, but also a real kind of defining moment for me in terms of just opening the whole thing up. I was 22 years old, actually, when I was invited to join this group, the LA Express, which was a bunch of Los Angeles session musicians, and backing Joni Mitchell. And that was like the farthest thing from my mind I could have ever imagined, you know. I wasn't really familiar with Joni Mitchell, not really. And, you know, these guys were playing what was known as fusion, you know, and I wasn't really into fusion. I was more into kind of traditional jazz and blues. So that opened my mind to all kinds of music, and I started listening to classical music. I started listening to Indian music. I started appreciating what pop artists were doing, whereas before that I really thought they were not very good musicians. I learned to appreciate a major triad, you know. Didn't have to be a 13 flat 9. And so I learned so much, you know, over about a 2-year period of time with those people that you know, really just opened the whole thing up for me tremendously.
What back then, obviously, or before then, should I say, you were mostly practicing blues,
jazz.
Jazz. What got you into? Was there a specific artist or album that got you into jazz, so to speak, or?
No, I mean, I was still in high school. I was still in my teens, and I just wanted to learn about more music, and I was drawn to jazz.
So, like most musicians, having an inquisitive mind and always seeking and searching for more.
Yeah.
Trying to see where you can pull from, and perhaps it naturally comes out in your playing.
Yeah.
Some people have to force it.
Right.
At least at the beginning, I know I did.
Yeah.
You have to force those jazz lines to come out, and eventually it starts to become, it all kind of melts together.
It becomes more natural to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely an osmosis kind of learning.
Yeah.
For me, you know. I had no teachers, so it was just being around people and musicians and listening. And
you primarily learned yourself. You don't have any formal.
No.
Okay.
I'm a self-taught guitar player. The only thing I did do was get a book full of jazz chords, and I learned all those chord voicings.
Right.
And they're still the same chord voicings that I play today. Exactly. I'm still playing Mickey Baker Jazz Chords Volume 1. Yep.
Well, I know you do a lot of teaching. Your guitar dojo that you have.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about? Obviously, you enjoy teaching.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about music education as it's academically taught in the universities, as opposed to like you did it? Like a lot of great musicians do it, just learning by doing it.
Yeah. I often find myself around musicians who are trained, who did go to school. And something that I have learned about that is, and I think this applies to any kind of academic pursuit, like the greatest gift of going to school is you learn how to learn.
Very, very important.
So this is something where, I'm still like, in some ways I was, when I was 13 years old, like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to draw on because it's not my habit. At this point, I'm kind of lazy, like I'm not going to settle down and I don't read music well.
Right.
I can read it, which I learn notes from the saxophone,
Sure.
and rhythms.
Sure.
But I'm not going to sit down and learn how to read music now.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
You don't sit down and practice, so to speak, either. I mean, I'm sure you sit down and play all the time.
I play. I will practice kind of back and forth picking technique and scales just to kind of get things moving.
Like a warm up, so to speak.
Yeah. But something just as kind of a footnote, just because we're on this subject. You play what you practice. So if you're practicing scales, then that's what you're going to play.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people will practice other people's solos, transcribe,
absolutely,
or just get them out of a book. Yeah.
Sure.
And at least in that context, you're playing music. You're playing through changes, or you're playing something that has a beginning, middle, and an end.
Right.
So practicing scales only goes so far,
No, I think, like you said, transcribing, as I understand it, of course, transcribing means literally to write, but I don't think that's the important part. The important part is figuring out by ear what it is that you like, whatever style of music it is.
Yeah.
Developing your ear
Yeah.
is probably of utmost importance.
I would say number one,
And
developing
then,
your ear.
Figuring out the stuff you like and trying to incorporate it into your playing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any guitarist or any musician seeks out wanting to be a clone of somebody else, but kind of like making a good soup. You put a bunch of stuff in and it comes out tasting like something else, hopefully.
Right.
With all of your influences together.
Well, I can say certainly that I wanted to be Michael Bloomfield. I wanted to be Mike Bloomfield. But before I was out of my teens, I was or I should say, I definitely wanted to have my own thing.
Sure.
So,
with influences of Mike and
yeah, because you got nothing without influences.
What was it like playing? You played with a bunch of people: Miles Davis, Chick Corea. On the other side, like you said, Joni Mitchell and Greg Allman and all sorts. What was it like? First off, playing with Miles. I've heard tons of stories about Miles.
Oh, sure.
What was it like playing with him, with that group?
Well, I played my first show with the group, meeting the band in the lobby of the hotel on our way over.
Nice.
I met Miles at the gig, before playing the gig. And, my experience with him was great. He was a very challenging person.
Sure.
But, he was challenging really just to kind of get a reaction out of you. He would push your buttons, just to get a reaction out of you. It wasn't, that he was trying to be mean.
No.
Well, I think a lot of people were very afraid of him. He was very intimidating.
Sure.
He walked into the room and it was his world, and you were just kind of inhabiting it. And if called upon,
called upon,
you would respond.
Right.
And I know that a lot of the guys were they just didn't know how to deal with it. You know, everybody just kind of kept quiet and, you know,
did what they were told, so to speak.
Yeah, that kind of thing. You know, you just followed him around.
Right.
But I figured it out, you know, really early, that he actually was just trying to get a reaction out of you. So even though it's still intimidating, because you just never knew what might happen with the guy, you know.
Right.
But I would come back to him with something. He'd say something to me, I would say something to him, and he would laugh, and we were good.
Yeah.
You know. So getting through that was an essential aspect of playing with Miles Davis. And again, I saw guys never get through that.
Right.
You know. And I felt bad for them. You know. But you know, the music was the music. You played, and every now and then he'd say something to you about what he might want. You know. Right. And I almost never understood what he said to me.
And his raspy.
Yeah.
Right.
It wasn't the voice. He would just say strange things. Robben, get them chords.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we've got 25 songs in the book.
Yeah.
I said, well, which one do you mean, Miles? He goes, you know, A7, F7. I'm like, okay. And somehow I actually figured out what he was talking about. I would get it, you know, but it was cryptic, shall we say.
That's great. Wow.
And yeah, it was a great experience, you know.
Yeah, it's something you just take away with you. You know, it's.
No, there's
sure.
nothing equals it.
Yeah, sure.
Nothing
Playing
compares with
someone
that.
like that. How about playing with? I saw online recently that you did some shows. I don't know if they were a random thing or if you still do it with Phil Lesh, the bassist of the Grateful Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a one-time thing, or is that something that you?
That was a summer tour.
Mm-hmm.
Phil Lesh and friends, and the rest of the band was a drummer named John Molo, who plays with a whole lot of different people. Phil Lesh, of course, on bass, and then Paul Barrere, the guitarist, and Bill Payne, the keyboard player from Little Feat.
Oh, okay.
Both of them were from Little Feat. And I knew them from years ago. I met them in L.A. I recorded on one Little Feat record.
Oh,
I played on a couple of songs. And that's where I met Billy and Paul. And then this was the first opportunity I got to really play with them.
Huh.
And yeah, that was the jam band world, you know?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to. That's why I mentioned it,
Mm-hmm.
because, as you said, the jam band world, it's improvisational to a certain extent. I mean, like jazz.
Definitely.
Like jazz, you got the melody. In this case, in Phil Lesh's world, you have the lyrics to the song, and you notice that, you know, you'll go into one song and into another song and back into the original song, and how does that compare to the freedom you get with jazz improvisation? It's a totally different thing, I would assume, but you might be able to shed some light on that.
The problem with that was that, you know, you were always waiting for the cue. And you never knew when the cue was going to come. So it was very hard to develop anything because you never knew when it was going to end. Or
you don't know how far to push it, or when to peak up.
Exactly, or bring it down, and because you're all basically under Phil's guidance throughout the whole time. And the longest amount of time would go on at the beginning of a song.
Just an intro.
Yeah. You start playing, and you keep thinking, okay,
here it is.
Now we're going to sing the song. No, we're still drifting. So it was hard that way. You know, just having to think about it all the time.
Right.
The simplest of things, you know. So, you know, but it definitely had its own charm or its own power, you know, like, because some of those jams would get really intense, really big, because the whole band's improvising at the same time. You know, it's a little bit different than being a soloist and you're being supported by a rhythm section.
Right.
Whole band is taking a solo for a long time. So it's a very different way of working, and you know, I didn't grow up that way, and you know, it's not really for me, that kind of a world.
Right. Well, I mean, everybody's got their comfort zone, so to speak, and what they like to do.
Yeah. I mean, I like music to have a beginning, middle, and end. And
well, it's easier to create a story, you know, like you said, to be able to know here it is, and as opposed to waiting for the cue.
Yeah.
And maybe you're not ready, or maybe it was too late, or, you know.
That's too late.
Do you regards to playing live and recording, I know for myself, I prefer playing live. I'll take live any day over the studio.
Yeah.
I don't like being in a room with 4 people under a microscope. And perhaps my personality, I'll just want to do it again and again and again when everybody else says, no, it's good enough, and it's not good enough for me. So I prefer to play live. You're in the moment. Mistakes come, mistakes go. Doesn't matter. You can't correct them.
Right.
How do you feel about recording or playing live? Do you enjoy one more than the other?
I like absolutely everything, you know. I like sitting at home writing a song as much as I like playing live, or I like being in the studio as much as playing live. You know, and all of it, it's always like a way to focus your attention on the music. It's either this way or that way or this way or that
different
way.
aspects of it.
Yeah, it's all good to me, you know. And playing live has its problems, you know. Like whether or not you have good sound, whether or not you have good gear, whether or not you like who you're playing with. I mean, there's all kinds of factors.
Your gear can break.
Anything can happen.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know. It's not just like you throw the switch and all is good.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, there's so many factors. So to me, it's always just a good opportunity to do something musical, be it writing or getting a good sound, all those things.
As far as getting a good sound, are you a real tone person, so to speak?
Oh, yes.
You know, you hear about these guys. The name that comes to mind is Eric Johnson, for example, who will spend just a massive amount of time and money on getting. So you're very tone oriented.
Well, I mean, that's, you know, Eric, God bless him. You know, it's a bit neurotic because you will never get that.
You'll never get.
You'll never get what that is.
Right,
whatever that is, you'll never get it.
Yeah.
But I admire him tremendously.
Sure.
You know, for his dedication and the energy and time that he does put into trying to get whatever it is he's looking for. You know. Right. So I think it's brilliant. You know, I would be on the other extreme compared to Eric Johnson. But you know, like for me, a good guitar and a good amplifier, a little bit of reverb
from the amp or
anywhere.
Okay.
But just good reverb. You know, like that's all that I really need. You know, beyond that, it's not really necessary. So, and I say this because you know, to encourage people, especially guitar players, because they're always looking for the next gadget. You know, and there's so many things to get a good guitar, get a good amplifier, you know, and learn how to play.
Yeah, probably should come first.
Yeah,
because you can get a lot of gadgets, as you said, that can make you sound,
like something.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Gear-wise, Telecaster.
Yeah, 60 Tele. Currently, I'm playing a 60 Tele. I've got a 66 Riviera with me, and I'm mentioning this because you know I really like vintage.
Yeah.
New is just new. You know, it's not. It doesn't have the warmth of vintage anything. You know, vintage guitars in particular. So I like old. You know, but it doesn't have to be.
Mostly tube amps, I would assume.
Strictly tube.
Yeah, strictly. Okay.
But I mean, and that's the other thing. I've been using the same amplifier since 1983.
Dumble
Overdrive Special. It's been the same amplifier on every record I've ever made.
I won't even ask how you got that because you know you hear the stories of I don't even know how to get one. I mean you know.
Well, he doesn't make them anymore.
Yeah.
No, I bought
You bought it for
in 82 or whatever 82, 83. I bought my first Dumble. I bought a second one a few years later.
Really?
So I got them when they were affordable. You know. And now. First they got unaffordable, and then you just stopped making them altogether. You know?
Yeah, I think I heard stories of them being $20,000-$30,000 for
If you were to order an amp and he was to make it for you, and this is just the head. It would be between $25,000 and $30,000
just for the head.
Yeah.
You bring that amp on tour with you, or really? You bring that on the plane? Huh?
Oh yeah. No, he tests the durability of the amplifier by dropping it off the second floor of a building.
Really?
Not to cement, but to earth.
Yeah. Well,
nonetheless,
it's still 2-story, right?
Yeah, I mean, you'll shatter tubes that way, but you can't hurt that amplifier.
Wow. And what about effects-wise? Is it a lot? A lot of effects stripped down? What?
I just use a little bit of reverb. You know, I'm currently using. Shall I mention?
Oh, you just mentioned. Sure.
Yeah, it's a TC Electronics Hall of Fame little pedal. It's nice.
Very nice.
It's good. I use that. and I use a Strymon delay. And
some kind of tuner or something.
Well, sure. You know, that could be any tuner, right?
Sure.
And I've been using the Zen Drive for an overdrive. Dumble has an overdrive and a boost in it. But that's really pretty much it. You know.
Preferences, picks, strings.
I use Diodario 10s and I use Diodario heavy picks.
Regular size.
Yeah, the regular triangular.
Yeah, sure. What is it? What are you currently working on? I know obviously you're on tour right now.
Yeah.
But is there anything that you're thinking about doing?
Well, yeah. I'm writing actually.
Writing for a new album.
For a new record. I'll be in the studio in September.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit before then, but September is formally what I've set aside for the record.
Right.
And very much looking forward to it. It's going to be very new, kind of for me. I'm kind of going through a phase, or entering a new phase, I should say, in my writing that I'm enjoying. That's the thing that I've really been working on, really, for the past, almost 30 years.
Writing.
My attention toward, growth, getting better at something, has been really about songwriting and about delivering a song.
Right.
As opposed to learning the next 2-5-1 or anything like that.
Interesting. And writing can be a challenge. Sometimes you hit a wall and you don't know what should come next. Sometimes you put a tune on the back burner for years and years and years, and you have this one thing you've been working on, and you just can't seem to take it anywhere. And
that's right.
Interesting. What can we ever expect a jazz album, straight ahead jazz album from you?
Really unlikely. Never say never. But
right. You never.
Really
know, right?
Unlikely.
Do you have any tips for aspiring guitarists? I mean, obviously you've had a long, fruitful career. Tips for guitarists or musicians that are looking to do what you do.
You mean professional tips?
Sure. Well, as far as
what it is to be a professional musician.
Sure.
Out there in the world.
Yeah, out there in the real world, not playing.
Yeah.
Not playing in small towns, and out there making a living as a musician, which is not an easy thing to do.
No.
At all.
It's very difficult, and it's only harder than it ever was.
That's
because,
true.
Yeah, there's such a glut of people out there making CDs, banging on instruments, and it's such an individual journey. Yeah. Everyone has their own path, their own life ahead of them. I was fortunate very young. I got breaks very young. So it set me up for a professional career. In my early 20s, I was already working with people who were, legendary.
Sure.
So everybody knew who I was quickly. So that made it easy. Of course, you have to be able to play. You have to be able to deliver.
Well, yeah, the breaks, you got to be prepared.
Yeah, you have to be prepared for the breaks.
Luck is great.
Yeah.
But you have to be prepared to step into that situation.
Quite honestly, if you are prepared, you'll probably run into something.
You'll find a way, sure.
It seems to be essential to be somewhere where you can be seen and heard.
That's true.
And, New York City, Los Angeles, these were the classic places, certainly for jazz musicians or people who are really trying to develop themselves as musicians, become a better musician. That in itself is not what you will find necessarily in pop music. Doesn't seem to me. There's a certain amount of stasis that occurs there because it's about something else other than growing as a musician. It seems to be more about growing your bank account or getting more attention.
It's more of a packaged product, so to speak, I guess.
Certainly you see a lot of that.
Yeah.
But if you really are an aspiring musician, you love music, you want to play music, and you'd like for people to hear your music, you need to be someplace to be seen and heard. And Nashville has become, for me, a very positive place. For the musicians living and working there, they will tell you it's a cookie-cutter industry of country music, which it is. It's the same musicians on every record. with the same sounds, doing the same things.
Right.
And we're hoping that Nashville is going through a bit of a change itself, because there is this evolving music scene under,
Sure.
for songwriters, and in particular, Nashville's a great place. For musicians, you could be anywhere
Yeah.
in any urban environment.
Sure.
You're going to find bands in Seattle, Chicago, St. Louis. There's
All around
music
the world,
happening,
sure.
yeah, all over the place, yeah.
All right. I guess one more quick thing.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Mike Bloomfield. If I was to ask you, or should I say I'm going to ask you,
All right.
do you have a favorite guitarist? Is it still Mike? Is there somebody else that you're listening to now that, I mean, if somebody asked me personally who my favorite guitarist is, I can answer that very quickly. It's cut and dry for me.
Right.
But
Well, I don't listen to guitar players. I make it a habit not to listen to guitar players, because you sound like what you listen to, right?
Sure.
There are several guitar players that I admire.
Yeah.
As far as favorite guitar players, probably...
My favorite musician even would be fine.
Well, I don't mind the guitar question because it would be Jim Hall. Jim Hall would be my favorite guitar player.
That's a very good call.
I could say that pretty much unequivocally. Yeah.
Very unfortunate. A few months back, I believe
He sure did a lot for the world, man.
Sure, we were all lucky.
That's right.
Lucky to have had him as long as we did. Should I say?
He lived a quite long life.
Yeah.
too.
What an improviser. What a
Everything.
Yeah.
He was a master
of
of
complete package.
all of it. Yeah.
Sure. Well, great. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Once again, this was Robben Ford with Michael Kaplan from the American Guitar Academy, and we're fortunate enough to have Robben here with us today. And hope it was informative for everybody out there. Don't forget to sign up for our YouTube channel and subscribe, and look forward to seeing everybody for more interviews and instructional videos from the American Guitar Academy. Thanks again, Robben.
Thanks, Michael.
I appreciate it.
Cheers.